Hello, this is From the Mezzanine, a film podcast. We are Chuck and Matt, two guys with a passion for all things film and TV. We are not professionals. We aren't here to shill browser extensions. And we're not going to start every show talking about an overpriced Patreon page. However, in 32 episodes, there's something we've never said on air that may help us grow our small channel a little bit. It costs you absolutely nothing but a few seconds, but I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe if you like what you see. It would be much appreciated. Take it away, Chuck.
It would just knock my socks off. You know, it seemed a little presumptuous even from the beginning to insist that anybody like and subscribe to anything I create. You know, such is my imposter syndrome, I guess, but yeah, like this was literally just something we're doing for fun. But we've been at it at such a you know, like a pace. It's just become such a fabric of my week that, you know, that's a lot of, you know, investment and, you know, just in our own ability to put out content and, you know, make sure that we carve out the time to have anything to talk about. You know, half the time. That's half the battle these days. Yeah. You know, life doesn't slow down, but it does a little bit, at least once a week, when I get to convene with you. You know, bridge the gap of distance, you know, in space, and shoot the shit about shit, and at least hopefully guide the general public toward something that is really worth their time and away from everything that is just a colossal waste of it. That's really all that we can hope to accomplish with this. So yeah, cheers to you if you have been with us up to this point, but yeah, spread the word, let people know what we're about, and that we're really trying to be authentic, no bullshit about it. Mm-hmm. You know, we just want people to go to movies. We don't care exactly what. You know, we're not going to demand that no one see Minions, even though that might be good for, you know, the soul of humanity. But people will go to Minions, and we should let them do that. And we should, you know, just see what you want to see, support shit that you like, and, you know, support your local comic book store. That's our PSA for today. Thank you, Matt, for, you know, bringing it up. Mm-hmm. And because we're about to dive into something that's a lot less, I guess, serious. Because you were talking about crushes, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that what it was? I lost the link to the video that I made, like the banner for it. So remind us all what the part in question was.
Yeah, so I was just kind of curious about, you know, from what you remember anyways, what was your first on-screen crush, and how old were you, and what was it from, and why do you think particularly it was that person?
See, my mom gave me shit, even when I was a little boy, about this particular thing. Because in my hometown at the grocery store was where we rented movies, got VHS tapes. Mm-hmm. And there was one movie in particular that I always told my mom to get, from like the age of 3 on up, until they stopped, you know, having, you know, tapes there. And we had the chance to buy this movie, you know, when they stopped renting and they were liquidating their library. We could have bought it, but my mom was like, I fucking rented that shit so many times, we basically bought it 10. So no, I'm not gonna, you know, fucking buy it for you. And that movie was The Rocketeer, because of, you know, our old friend Jennifer Connelly, who is in Top Gun Maverick, but she, you know, she was a lot better as the love interest in this movie. She had better material, and she had, you know, a lot better material herself just in this movie. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's the only answer I could possibly give. But yeah, like I Jennifer Connelly and Rocketeer.
This makes sense.
Yeah,
this is I think a very popular and very, very refined choice for a child of the 80s. I think a lot of people... I mean, the movie that you said, though, is probably a little different. I think a lot of people would cite... oh, God, why am I blanking on the name? The David Bowie movie. A lot of people would cite that movie as, like, their...
Labyrinth. Yeah.
Yeah, Labyrinth. So, but yes, this, for sure. I've heard this one from many a 80s child, so...
Yeah, it's logical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rocketeer's awesome.
That's an awesome movie.
And that's why you're there, and then it also just happens to be the movie that makes you a man, at the age of 3.
Yeah, well, I guess for me, how old would you say you were? Just curious. When maybe like the first time you rented it and like the last time that you rented it.
Well, I was like... Probably,
is this like over years?
Yeah, years. This is like from
God.
This is like from the age of 4 until like the age of like 8. So yeah, like a 4-year period. And then we couldn't rent it anymore. This is pre-internet, pre-Netflix streaming, all that kind of shit. So I just don't see The Rocketeer for years. Like at least like it takes me another 10 years before I'm able to own The Rocketeer again. So I guess that's the story of that. Yeah,
mine is, I guess, a little older. I was trying to rack my brain for, like, super, super young stuff, but the farthest back I could go was probably around 7 or 8. I used to get babysit by my aunt a lot, and whenever I went over to her house, I would always watch, like, the same 3 movies. It was Edward Scissorhands, Coneheads, and Beetlejuice. And so my choice for this one is Lydia Dietz from Beetlejuice.
What the fuck?
Yeah, Winona Ryder, because there's something about that, I don't know, that 80s goth aesthetic that is exotic to an 8-year-old boy who's growing up in North Dakota. And, this was way before whatever the fuck goths turned into in the early 2000s, because I find that so, like, unattractive. But what goths were when they were more associated with the music of the time in the 80s, that was my shit when I was little. And there's something about her attitude in that movie too that's interesting. That's sort of like depressive, like what's the word, to sunder.
Yeah. Sundundre, yeah. I don't know how to say it. I'm not enough of a weeb, but I know of it. Yeah.
So that's kind of her attitude, and so that's part of it too. But that's the furthest back one I can think of.
Right on. No, I can get behind that. I remember watching the what do you call it? The animated show for Beetlejuice, and thinking that because I saw that before I ever saw the movie. It was years before I ever saw the actual movie, but the animated version of her was pretty cute too. Yeah,
I remember that. She had that red dress. And
exactly, yeah.
I remember.
And she was just really all about calling Beetlejuice at the beginning of every episode. That was my takeaway. So, how old were you about, did you say?
Like 7 or 8, I would say.
7 or 8, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you were just like, she's pretty cute. Winona Ryder is pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah.
How old were you when you saw Heathers?
Oh God, I was pretty old when I saw it for the first time. It was something that kind of didn't infiltrate my pop culture landscape when I was a teenager or a kid. So I would say like early 20s is when I saw that. Maybe.
Okay, gotcha. No, that is a deeper cut. Like that's for me. Heathers was the movie that I heard about because of I Love the 80s or like whatever that show was called. Because that's also, how when you don't have access to shit, you find out about shit is just by watching trivia shows on VH1.
Yeah, when they used to actually show those shows.
But that was a whole industry. Like, that's what's wild to me now. Now we just have cheddar at the pump.
Yeah.
Golly.
Is that the holiday? Is that like a gas station thing or
yes,
what is
it
that?
is.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Your fill up news from cheddar. Ah, damn. I'll tell you who has not. Well, I guess it's not since his last cheat day. Has this man had cheese though? But our boy, Black Adam, finally got himself a trailer. That's pretty cool, I must say. Bear with me while I get this thing pulled up. But yeah, this is basically more of the Shazam flavor of a DC movie. Is that kind of the vibe we're getting?
Yeah, I think they're being a little bit obtuse about whether or not it's going to tie into the actual Shazam film universe, but that is in the comics. That is what he is related to, is the Shazam universe. So I guess that remains to be seen if Zachary Levi will show up. But yeah, that is hypothetically what would happen.
I see. Okay. Well, what do we make of this? We have a whole bunch of... Is that Dr. Fate? Okay.
Yeah, Pierce Brosnan's Dr. Fate, yep.
This could fucking rule. Am I just being dumb? Or could this rule?
I think you're totally right. I'm totally down for like a Dr. Fate, Atom Smasher's in there too. And,
yeah, that's what I mean.
And I like this is a really cool selection of DC characters to pull from, and characters that haven't really shown up in any sort of DC thing that's been on film at all. And so, there is part of me that thinks this could be cool, but there is a part of me that really, really dislikes The Rock's sort of carelessness with how he puts himself out there, and he oftentimes says stuff in interviews that he has absolutely no bearing for, or no he just kind of offhandedly remarks on stuff to get people on his side. And so that's kind of the other angle I'm coming at with this trailer. I don't know, do you know about any of this stuff that he's talked about with this movie? He is long since this has been his dream project. He's talked about this for literally 10 years. And so do you know any of the background at all?
I guess I not particularly know. Not the recent comments, if there are any. All I really knew was, I was very familiar with just how long this was, in gestation. Mm-hmm. But the whole problem with anything DC related is the complete ambiguity about how it fits into anything else, or if you should even want it to. So the fact that in a way he is right, this thing can just be whatever he wants it to be, and if he wants it to be exactly where his wheelhouse is. I tried watching Jungle Cruise last night before November and the dog both decided that Bluey was actually what we would be watching. But from what I saw of that, I was just kind of I was ruminating on how that related to this news, or at least what I could glean from it. And I don't know, this man has an ego bigger than Vin Diesel's, and he potentially could be running for president in the next cycle. And that is not a silly comment. That is something that a lot of people desire him to do. They wanted him to do it 2 years ago. They would love to do it for him to announce that he is running tomorrow. So that a lot of political questions can be answered, but that is a whole different conversation. But that's the kind of man we're dealing with. Not only is he desired and built everything in his career to be able to make this movie, but it's just a part of a larger project from the humble beginnings he came from to where he is today. This man's Bill Gates. This man has probably been to that fucking day away camp that all the elites go to in California.
Oh, the something Grove.
Yeah, Bohemian Grove. Yeah. He's been there. He is a part of Elon Musk's secret blood cult. They all want to become hologram people so they can live forever on Mars. And that's my take on that.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the president stuff, because that's exactly kind of the track I was going to go with this, where his public image is so cultivated, and he's a lot like Will Smith was in that way, where everything is everything is down to a science as far as what he wants the public to know about him, what he wants them to see, and what he wants us to think about him. And that's kind of where I'm bumping up against this movie, is because he said stuff in interviews in the past where he's like, yeah, this is going to be my R-rated vision for Black Adam, and it's going to kick ass, and, don't you worry, this is going to be exactly what you want, comic book fans. And now he's, like, waffling on all that stuff because the movie's actually being made, like, for real.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's interesting. I think he's just, like, full of shit in a lot of ways, and I totally see this, like, there's this line in the trailer where I think it's Pierce Brosnan is talking, and he says something like, you can either destroy the world or be the one who saves it. And it's like, oh, okay, so they're totally setting up an ending where he becomes the good guy. He goes from, like, anti-hero to good guy, and that's kind of where I'm bumping up against this movie, and I'm totally down for it if it can do something interesting. Or even if it's like a decent comic book movie, but I hate the Rock's off-screen, like, shit, like all of his, like, dumb, like, pandering, and, like, he's trying to answer every interview question he gets to please the maximum amount of people.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's an approach to public relations that the general public mistook as genuine sincerity for a long time from a lot of different celebrities. Like, Ellen DeGeneres is the most obvious example. But you can't be as like The Rock in real life is like like Tom Cruise's character from what's that fucking movie?
Tropic Thunder.
From Tropic Thunder. It's like that level of psychotic. Like, there's something going on beneath the surface in that man for him to, like, be able to, literally fast and, like, meticulously craft his diet, like, however many days straight that he does so before he literally consumes an entire, like, food court's worth of food. Like, there's something wrong with you. Like, if you have the kind of mentality that Joe Rogan will just, like, sit and, like, stare at with a slack jaw while you talk about your daily routine, like, this is a crazy person. Like, he's who you want, like, awake in bed when the phone rings, when Benghazi is popping off or some shit. I'm joking.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting.
It's interesting, and I guess I don't have too much more to say on it, but it remains to be seen. I'll see this for sure. I'm definitely going to see it being sort of the DC zombie, but
the only Black Adam story I have any connective tissue with, as far as my comic book journey is concerned, is just from 52. Which was, it did kind of focus on him trying to, like, lead his nation and, like, be the good guy for a change. But that's the comic book character. It's like, how do you take this guy from being legitimately a villain at the front end of the movie and making him at least an anti-hero? That's easy, but by comic book movie standards, I don't know. It's kind of a big ask.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it kind of pans out and whether people kind of hold that against him, because there is a lot of discussion online about this very thing we're talking about. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this pans out in the coming months.
It really will. I have a lot of faith based on the snippets I saw in the trailer that they could convince a comic book nerd like me into seeing it. Especially if I get to see, like, Dr. Fate or other, like, weird cosmic heroes, like I don't know, like the weird ultra-powered Bizarro ones, from the D list of DC's library. Like, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
What people were not here for, it's just memes, guys. It was not Morbin time. Not even a little bit. It was not Morbin time. So I don't know. This kind of just happened right in front of me in slow motion, and I didn't even realize it. But yeah, because I was seeing the ironic, Morbin time memes, all of the people talking about how the box office and good reviews it was getting and shit, because it is just truly that despicably bad of a movie, from what I understand. It's allegedly. I haven't seen it.
Me neither.
It's just based on what I know. And the fact that no one who made it had any clue what they were doing. It just makes you sad. Because it's fucking Morbius. This could have been a stepping stone to Mahershala Ali's Blade movie that is also, fabled at this point. Who knows if it's real?
Yeah.
I don't know, but Sony looked at like all of the fucking traction they were getting on the aggregators and the searches because people were loving these Morbidtine memes because they were just terrible, hilarious, and whatnot. And some motherfucker decided that, well, this means that they want more of it. Like, this is genuine. Is that really what happened here? So that they rolled it back out to theaters so it could lose money. It only raked in like $70,000 or some shit nationwide.
Yeah, it did. It's so funny because obviously the moral of the story here is memes do not translate to an actual
Real
desire to want to see this movie. And we've got like a trio of box office stories here, and this is kind of the sad one because it's interesting because I think one of the things I kind of gleaned from this was, Generation Z, Generation Zoomer, they don't care about actually seeing any of these things or they don't care about the experience. They just want other people to think that they experienced it, on social media or in real life or wherever. So it's like, people, I would say probably 90% of the people who are doing these memes haven't even seen the movie, because it only raked in like 70 million, I think, in its first run. And so it's like all these people are doing these memes and they're, clowning on the movie, and it's just like nobody's seen it. Nobody cares to see it. And it's kind of just sad.
Like, was it breaking what's the piracy numbers? Like, was it doing really well on the torrent websites? And they were like, hey, they're clowning on us, but they watching. So let's try and bait them. No, it's not going to work. I mean, it's like people are going to stay home so that they can watch Doctor Strange at home, And I guess this is an offshoot question, but as far as the Summer Movie Challenge is concerned, is the longevity of that movie diminished now that it's going to be available on Disney Plus?
Doctor Strange?
Yeah, Doctor Strange.
Is that? I guess I haven't heard about that. Is that the word? Is that are they going to put it up this week or something?
Yeah, okay. Like maybe not this week, but like at least in like imminently, like within the next week. Yeah,
I think I believe, if I remember right, Disney's kind of protocol is 45 days. Like
that's so it feels so quick.
Yeah. So because it was what, May 6th? Is that what it was when it came out?
Yeah.
So maybe next week.
That's what kicked off summer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of wild to me.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does chance harming that movie because it's still doing really good. I mean, it's still the #1 movie of the year. And I guess we'll talk about whether or not it's going to stay that way here in a little bit.
We'll see.
Yeah,
because I guess because we'll move on to the next movie. I believe it is or Everything Everywhere All at Once. That just got really tedious to write, so I had to make it smaller. But this movie just kicked Hereditary off the top spot. Ari Aster is a bitch. Daniels, our boys, are the real kings of A24 cinema kino shit. So how does a movie like this knock off a horror masterpiece while being so kind of whimsical and weird? The hook for this is, it's like you can't just say, oh, it's spooky scary, we can all get behind that. it's this movie's impossible to explain. We just need to watch it together. You know, like that's the kind of appeal that this movie has. Like, there's nothing else that's ever been before or since like it, and yeah, it touched a nerve with a particular crowd. But like,
Yeah, I mean it's gotta be word of mouth, right? I mean
right.
that's like the only explanation because it didn't do so as good in its first couple weeks out, and then it just blew up. And the really interesting thing is I think they had said that from the week this movie went wide release across the US to the second week it was wide release, it had only dropped something like 9%, which is
That's
absolutely
nuts.
nuts.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
like any movie of any caliber, it, like would loves to hear that. They have that kind of retention. Like Disney better get numbers that good, or they spent hundreds of millions of dollars for nothing. You know, and it's a testament to what these kind of more personal, bizarro projects can do in this marketplace. Like, I don't know, like it's hard to know what movies even can be made these days. Angie and I were kind of talking about that because we were watching A Few Good Men, just as a quick digression. It's like they don't make movies like that anymore either.
no.
You know, like that kind of serious adult drama thing, you know, with a very kind of vaguely timely, you know, narrative, you know, with, you know, like Aaron Sorkin's, wordplay, you know, starring, you know, mega movie stars. That shit doesn't happen any more than even a movie like this happens with great frequency. You know, more often than not, it's just the same formula. It's like video games are all the same these days. Everything is an open world RPG, and yeah, I guess, yeah, every movie's a multiverse movie, but none of them are going to be quite like, you know, everything everywhere all at once.
Yeah, I mean this would have been impossible to predict, and it's like, I mean, I guess A24's sort of their logline or their sort of mantra is, you know, we greenlight enough stuff that the stuff that blows up can offset the stuff that bombs, because
Yeah.
you know, you have movies like this that just out of nowhere do gangbusters, and then you have stuff like Pleasure. I don't know. Do you know that one? Have you heard of Pleasure? The movie about the porn star in LA.
Oh, yeah, I have heard of that.
Yeah, and it's like you have movies like that, and it's like nobody goes to see that movie, and you know, you have to get enough of these hits that it offsets those misses, and so they somehow have gambled that and struck gold for quite a few times, you know, for quite a few years. So.
Yeah. Have they ever had a Best Picture nomination? Or like are they about to, like, as a studio, you know, finally, you know, like, you know, get over that hump, not just be, you know, like a name, but be one of the players, like who's actually, or is it just that the Oscars don't matter? So why am I even asking this question?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked into that, but I don't know if I think they have had a Best Picture nominee. I think their movies are just generally too weird for, and they don't release a lot of stuff in the fall either. That's the other thing that's weird about A24's. A lot of their stuff just kind of comes out in the summer and like the springtime as something that can go against, you know, do well against the big blockbusters because there's not a lot of audience crossover.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I suppose now with the, you know, COVID habits, people probably do just elect to just pull the trigger and pay the money to just stream it at home. You know, a lot more often than we maybe would expect. You know, especially with something weird. You know, it's like there's some movies you don't want to watch in public. Like when I saw Spring Breakers, I was glad I was the only person in the theater. You know, it would not have been a comfortable experience to know that there was anyone else anywhere near me during that movie, because you just don't know what other people are going to fucking do. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
so it's a weird one.
Exactly. This one is a lot more, isn't that weird. It's on Harmony Korine, but the point still stands. But good for them. Congrats. You know, it's Ari Aster can, you know, pound sand now. There's new kings, you know, on the block, and hopefully they can fund a lot of other people's bizarre or interesting projects that go outside of the Marvel method. And I don't know, like, it's the business is in a strange place. Like, they're making blacklist scripts about Matt Drudge into movies. You know, they're really scraping the bottom of the cultural barrel right now, and it's just hard to know what's going to be worthwhile. Which is why, you know, I'm glad that the next movie we're going to talk about was as good as it was, and has seemed to have caught, you know, a wave, because, you know, Top Gun Maverick continues to stick around in the box office. It's way cooler than Lame Dinosaurs, you know, because at least, you know, F-18s are real, bitches. You know, your dinos will never be real. But yeah, this movie has gotten a lot of people actually going to theaters again this summer. There's actually something worth seeing. Everybody wants to be nostalgic, so here you go. Here's a movie made for today, as though the audience is unchanged from 1986. You know, with some appropriate pandering, but not excessive, not, you know, rubbing your nose in it. And, you know, there is some eye candy. It's not as homoerotic, but there's eye candy.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because this right now it's sitting at number 3, best performing movie of the year domestically, and number 4 worldwide. Yeah. And it's nudging up against the number 2 spot and the number 3 spot right now, and it's probably going to jump one more space at the very least.
This is nuts.
And I guess, to go back to what you were saying before, right now number 1 is Doctor Strange, and you know, if what you said, you know, pans out and Doctor Strange is released on Disney Plus, and this movie is very specifically not released on a streaming service because of Tom Cruise, will this just zoom up the ranks and beat Doctor Strange?
That's the thing. This is a military movie. It will get the July 4th boost. You know?
Oh yeah.
You know, it has incentive to stick around. No one's gonna give a shit about, you know, which Marvel movie is out over the 4th of July. Like, they're going to be like, what does my dad want to see? What would my dad have wanted to see? Those are the questions they're going to be asking. What would my mom want to go? She'd want to go see Tom Cruise in Top Gun, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's very, very interesting, very unexpected, and it sort of defies expectations. And I guess the takeaway is you can't bruise the Cruise.
Nah, dude. The Cruise is here for good. He's never going away. He is fucking... I keep circling back to my theory that he has just been covertly making crypto Metal Gear Solid movies this whole time. Because as soon as they hopped into that fucking ancient F-14 in Iran, and not Iran, rather... and you know, it got it airborne so that they could win a dogfight against a modern fighter. I didn't quite articulate how much that pleased me, you know, as like as far as my inner like 8-year-old is concerned, even more than, you know, Madam Jennifer Connelly, you know, ever did. Like, that sight, you know, makes that movie worth seeing in theaters again. I'll just close with that. Because is there a lot to say about our next movie here? You know, how would you describe your theatrical experience with Jurassic World Dominion?
Yeah, this is a soulless movie. This is a 4-quadrant, nothing burger, CGI fuckery, just among the stupidest films I've ever seen, and there's very little positive to take away from this. And it fundamentally misunderstands why people want to see these movies, and it does the thing all Lego sequels do, where it digs up old characters and somehow makes their appearance in older movies worse, because we know that this is where these characters are eventually going to end up. Even though we're watching Jurassic Park from 1993, we know that this is what happens to them in the future. So it kind of makes their appearances even worse, and the script is terrible, and There's a subplot having to do with giant locusts and human cloning that turns the movie into a spy thriller without any dinos, and yeah, it sucks. It was so fucking bad.
That's very disappointing to hear, because now I have no interest in seeing it in theaters unless I am like catatonically high on something. Or just drunk out of my mind, because otherwise I don't know if I'd be able to enjoy it. It just sounds like the kind of movie that would just piss me the fuck off. Like, I am someone who used to pay money to see movies like Transformers 2 Revenge of the Fallen. And there's just something that a man has to, stop doing. And going to movies that make me upset is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for like movies that are so bad they're good, or enjoyable on a more action level, action set piece level. But this really doesn't have those. There's one I kind of hinted at it before, but they've constantly had the criticism with all three of these Jurassic World movies that people want more dinosaurs. After every single one of them comes out, that's what people say. They're like, get rid of the human drama bullshit and give us more dinosaurs. And they never have done it. And this movie's, it's the same. The dinosaurs show up in like the last 40 minutes of this 2.5-hour movie, and it is cool. There's a pretty good action set piece at the end that's in like an urban area that reminds me of The Lost World.
Okay.
But it's kind of too little too late, and the rest of the movie is such a slog to get through, and there's this... You remember Dogson from the first movie?
So is it the same actor? Did they bring him back?
Yes.
God damn.
It's this... They bring back Dogson through the power of memes, and it's the same actor, and it's just like, this guy is so... I had to look up his name, because I wasn't familiar with the actor other than knowing him from Jurassic Park, and the actor's name is Campbell Scott. Okay. And he delivers one of the worst performances in a like blockbuster movie I've ever seen. He plays like he's morphed into like this weird tech giant CEO, and he's kind of channeling like Steve Jobs, but he's a lot more like manic, and he's very fidgety, and it's so bad. That is the one thing in this movie that the people who were in the audience with me, everyone was laughing at. Like a lot of the badness of this movie goes over a lot of people's heads, but that was the one thing that people just kind of uncomfortably laughed at with everyone else in the theater. So
yeah, okay, because I didn't even get the chance to see this in the theater, so that is the thing that is missed from streaming. Not this movie, but because you talking about that character made me think about the Don't Look Up, CEO character. And
Mark Rylance.
Did you find that funny? That performance? How does like, whose tech giant is more successful?
No, I mean I didn't think it was just weird. I mean, it's kind of the same energy, I guess. I mean, in Don't Look Up, at least, the supposition is that it should be funny, or we should be laughing at it. But in this movie, it's supposed to be serious, but it's just terribly funny.
Like, yeah, like, I can understand, like from a lore perspective, why it works to make him be the villain of this movie, but make him more interesting than that. Because that's the thing. The character it originally was just a 90s corporate bad guy. Just a pirate. He was just a corporate pirate. The kind of guy who just flips shit for money and, does so from a cell phone in a bunch of Caribbean-based offices. Who's just always moving. And wearing sunglasses and Panama hats. And they should not have updated him beyond that. They should have just let him be the same. But I guess that's the Top Gun lesson. That's the Maverick lesson. Try and keep shit unchanged as much as possible. Even if it's not, doesn't work with the era, it'll just work better for your audience that way.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of, unchanged things, the one thing in this movie that sort of works is the reappearance of Dr. Alan Grant and Ellie Sadler, Laura Dern, and Sam Neill. They have a couple of pretty good scenes together. Their banter is actually surprisingly well written, and if you're a fan of that, if you want to just come to the movie and throw on the nostalgia blinders, you can probably have a little bit of fun with that. But yeah, that is the only redeeming thing that I picked from this movie.
But they are not like the A plot. They are just this other cool thing that happens to be happening. Its stakes aren't nearly as high.
Yep.
Yeah. That's too bad. Because they were always the most capable, man. They survived an island full of raptors and a T-Rex. Yeah. They deserve more respect.
Oh, for sure.
This is my feeling. Well, not that I'm discouraged from seeing it, because I'll still see it. But the thought I had after listening to you talk about, the fan desire, which is to just basically have what that Apple TV Plus Dino show is, which is just nonstop dinos doing shit. Why don't we do the Jurassic, franchise package, right? But it's one of those life after people shows, but it's about after all the humans have died off and there's just the dinos left in the ruins of the human world, and it's just this Terrence Malick movie showing showing the dinosaurs repopulating the earth and ruling it, and actually ruling the world. That's what I want.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I could totally get like a full, like a TV show that is strictly the dinosaur scenes from Tree of Life.
Exactly. That's all that I want. I just want to see velociraptors hunting in the ruins of San Francisco. Like that. That's what I'm talking about here.
That would be sweet.
Jumping from skyscraper to skyscraper. Or not. Who knows? But
yeah, I mean, it
is what it is, right?
Yeah, I would just recommend not seeing it. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people still will. That's the thing about these movies, is each one of them is pretty terribly panned, but people still go see them. I mean, I went and saw it, so, what can you do?
Exactly. I mean, we all get bit. And it's just about, hey, being open to the possibility that it's going to be, at least worth it, or memorable, or not, at least not terrible. Because you also hopped on Video on Demand to see a movie that has been on our radar for a bit, which is Petite, Maman, which I finally read the premise of, and I'm very fascinated by it.
Yes, yeah, I was actually going to talk about that. I hadn't read the premise before we had seen it. I was just in on this movie once I found out it was from Celine Sciamma, and it finally got dropped on digital after like months of fake release dates, and it was good. This is a 70-minute movie about a little girl who her grandma dies, and then her mom and her dad go to the grandma's house to kind of clear out her things and kind of go through all of her possessions. And while she's there, she makes friends with a neighbor girl out in the woods. And there is a sort of lo-fi fantasy aspect to this movie that I'm not going to spoil beyond saying that.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. It's very lo-fi. It's very, it's not explained, and it doesn't really need to be explained because it kind of serves a purpose of sort of getting the movie's message across, which is sort of the relation between,
are they making lefse in that shot?
Yeah, I think they were, yeah. Or pancakes or something like that.
That's awesome. Is that the actor playing the father? Is that the guy from Headhunters?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I don't think I've seen that movie. Is that a movie?
Yeah, it looks very familiar. It's one of those Bo Nesbo, sort of adaptations.
Okay.
But this is on Video on Demand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
And I mean, I there's not really a ton to say about it, or not a lot I would want to say about it because it would kind of ruin it, but because of how short it is, and it's it's not as if anybody's seen Portrait of a Lady on Fire, it's not as like emotional as that movie. It's not as sad, I guess, and not as biting. And this is more of just kind of a pleasant watch. And you almost could think that it's maybe a little slight because it's so sort of whimsical and pleasant. But I really liked it. It was an enjoyable watch.
Well, I'm very, very intrigued, and I don't know. I am just in love with movies with short run times these days.
Yeah, me too.
And every time I hear it, I'm like, ooh, that's one that's worth my time, because I won't pass out in the middle of it. But really excited about this one, because our next movie, I did fall asleep in the middle of like 3 times as I tried to watch it. The next movie that we're going to be covering here is a bizarre little entry coming to us from, is it like Telugu or Tegalu?
Yeah, Telugu.
Telugu. Yeah. It's RRR, which stands for what again, Matt?
I have no idea.
It's like Rise, Revolution, something else. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's something, but yeah, this...
So I just wanted to ask you, how did you come upon this film? How did you first become aware of it?
So I had heard about it because of its re-release in theaters, because this movie has been on Netflix for months, and then it sort of gained popularity, and they were like, okay, we need to
It's incomprehensible. Yeah. It's like if Ong Bak had a dance sequence at the end of it. Like there's so many like strange like similarities that it has with so many bizarre, like unrelated. Everything is so disparate. But then it's this like biopic. It's like if Braveheart was set in India and went completely off the rails.
It's all very like homoerotic to these two guys. God. I mean, it's basically a love story, and this movie is like it's the embodiment of that scene in Predator when Carl Weathers and Arnold like clasp hands, and it just shows their biceps, like sweaty, rippling biceps.
Dude,
and
these that's the thing I was going to mention. These guys were legit ripped. Like Kumail Nanjiani or whatever his name is was just trying to look like these dudes when he was pumping himself full of growth hormone and eating kale or whatever he was doing. These gentlemen were absurdly ripped, and it was. And the whole point of the movie was to show us how fucking strong and awesome they were, which is why Bollywood movies are great. Like I put off watching this because I didn't know what to make of it. I was like, why is this thing relevant? Why is it popular? Because there was a stretch where Netflix was just pushing a ton of like Hindi like language content on me out of nowhere. There was just like really specific. Like they had like TV shows, like all kind like movies, and I was just like, "There's no way I'm gonna watch this." It's like I'm open-minded. I'm open to watching weird shit, but this is legitimately awesome. And it's popcorn for India. It's popcorn for the world now. It's ridiculous, but it's fun, but it's stupid.
It's very stupid, but I really enjoyed like myself through the whole thing. And did you eventually make it to the end?
I did. Yeah, because
the last fight scene is so insane.
It's the best. It's the fucking best. Every fight scene in this movie is the best. The one where he's like riding on his shoulders because his legs are broken, and they're fighting a bunch of people, and he's just on his. I don't know. Like I died. I died so many times watching this fucking movie. Yeah,
it's something, and it's just so like.
This is so nationalistic.
Yes, especially the ending dance sequence with all of like the statues and like the weird like North Korea paintings, like the North Korean like art style paintings, and it's very, very strange at the end. But I mean it was $75 million this movie was made for, which is technically India's most expensive movie ever, but it looks like it was like $300 million. Like it's so, it reminds you of how like how much money in Hollywood movies goes into advertising and is honestly like a lot of times just wasted on bullshit when you can make this movie for $75 million.
It really says something. I feel like like some studios should just throw $500 million into like the Nigerian film industry just to see what happens. Like that's kind of like what this kind of proves. You have no fucking clue what these people will be able to pull off if they have unlimited resources. And for them to have unlimited resources where they're from, it doesn't take much. They can do a lot with a little. Yeah, because like how much did Robert Eggers spend on The Northman? And that was, with like complications from COVID, I think it was about the same, like 90 million was its eventual budget. Like that was an impressive film. Don't get me wrong, but the scale of everything, when you think about what was accomplished for less than that, I think that's the context we need to take from this. Because if this is what the whole Bollywood film industry can create, I am here for it. Give it to me. This was ridiculous. But do I have to feel like I've just watched like a pre-genocide film? You know what I mean? Like, because that's the vibe. Like, this is what they played. Like at the Nazi rally in Nuremberg. This is Lenny Riefenstahl's like movie about the heroes of World War I during World War II. Like that's the vibe. It's like Starship Troopers level satire, but deliberate. It's not satire.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's I wouldn't look any deeper into it than the surface level, because once you start looking at that stuff, it kind of gives you that sort of gross feeling there's people out there that are taking this like incredibly seriously. When
instead it is like these men are ridiculous. The stunts that they have them doing are ridiculous. Their mustaches are impeccable. Their pecs. You can literally shatter diamonds on those pecs, and they're all sweaty. Like this movie was as sweaty and manly as Top Gun Maverick should have been. And I think that's why I vibed with it so much, because it filled that gap that I knew was missing. Because, this is just macho. This is Indian macho, and I'm here for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Yeah, go watch it now. It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
You can literally watch it right now, and it's just not the type of movie that normally goes there. It's so bigger than life that this doesn't fit the bill of a typical Netflix movie. Yeah, so.
I will say this could be on my best of list for the year when it's all said and done. That's how much I enjoyed it. How much I recommend it. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Just very quickly, I'd like to run through some streaming content that I finished up. Shining Girls ended, and it did so in a manner that was actually pretty satisfying. Well, and it maintained the heightened reality in a satisfying way, and it really did kind of it pulled it off, whatever it was trying to do. It's not quite as good as Severance was, but this is another winner for Apple TV.
And, I haven't gotten a chance to watch, I think, the last 2 episodes.
Okay, then I'll say no more. But just know that I say well worth it. The Staircase ended. Did you finish that?
I haven't that either. Okay. These are all like movies that I normally would watch with my wife. So
and now that she's gone, so. You're just I can just watch Kino 4K Blu-rays.
Yeah.
But I guess all that I'll say is that I will credit this movie for this show, this limited series, for going right into the meat of what the documentary does not show, which is this documentary really didn't give us a glimpse at who these people really were. It showed us the process behind the scenes of his trial, but you have no context for who these individuals really were and what they were going through. And it succeeds at capturing that, I would say, and it's at its best when it's doing that. But it really does get lost in the weeds it gets really bogged down in the last few episodes. But I really enjoyed what the last episode did, because it was more specific and it was more biting. So I think it's worth finishing, even if it is when Nikki gets home.
Yeah, I plan on it. I have seen the first 2 episodes because right in the middle of the show, there's that weird split where the court case is done and now it's about him in prison.
And that's where it really, really falls apart for me.
Oh, okay, really? Okay. Yeah. So I think I've only seen...
But it picks up after that. Yeah, the first few prison episodes work, But then it's like he still is in prison and everything is just bad happening to us. Nothing's going right. And it just gets hard to watch. It's because, no one can help him. The legal system's, all, gummed up. His life is nothing but monkey wrenches. And like the stories of his kids were interesting, and I did appreciate the fact that they got more time, since all he could do was just sit in prison and ask for money, because eventually that's all his character does, which is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
But the show is still worth finishing, and it's a nice, even though it might not be 100% true, it definitely is a nice companion piece to the documentary itself.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to just mention briefly that I watched Nothing Special, the final special from Norm Macdonald. That was a glorified Zoom call recorded like 3 weeks before he died. It is. So I talk about it not on its merits as a comedy special, because I don't think it's a very good one. It's a podcast. It's a YouTube live stream that he used to do quite a bit, towards the end of his career. He would just be at a desk, he'd have some youngins with him, and he would just riff for hours. And that's basically what this thing was. But at the same time, it definitely just has this feeling of a guy knowing he's going to die and knowing that he needs to do one last thing. So it's morbid and fascinating in that respect. But I don't know how funny it really is on that level. So I can't recommend it as a comedy special, but as an exploration of a person at the end of their life, in a very compartmentalized manner, just to see them in a moment, shortly before they're unable to do that kind of thing anymore. It's kind of a beautiful thing, but it's sad. So get ready to be sad, basically. But don't. Yeah, I don't know. It's just hard for me to find the jokes to land well for me, because it's not a true special. There isn't an audience. It's just him talking into a webcam like you and I are right now. Sure. Getting distracted. Like his phone rings while he's in the middle of it. He answers it. Like his cats or like his pets show up at certain points. It's a very uneven thing. And it doesn't really feel like the real deal, towards the end.
What do you make of the? I haven't watched this, but I've heard about it. And what did you make of the sort of thing at the end, the sort of round table, I guess, segment?
I didn't watch that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because they did something. It's not that they did something similar for somebody else, I thought. Who was in the round table? Was it like Chappelle and them?
Yeah, I think it was like Dave Chappelle, David Letterman. I can't remember who else, but there was like two other people.
All the Netflix aligned people.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. But I've heard that kind of from other people that have watched this. I've heard that kind of puts the show in more like perspective, because they talk about kind of what the man meant to them, and and also kind of more of the details behind the special itself. Like, I guess this special was intended to be like, if he survived longer,
it would never be released.
No, it would have basically just been him practicing a set. So like it possibly would have never been released, but he would have performed these jokes on a stage if he would have survived longer. Basically.
That's what I mean, exactly. Yeah. So this was just his Since he couldn't go out and practice, this was him just laying it down, basically. Demoing the work. Okay.
Yeah.
So that explains that. I probably should go back and watch the Talking Heads talk. But, yeah, the Shining Girls fucking rules. It's so weird. It's so out there. I don't know if they have plans to do more. I don't know if there's anything to adapt, or if anyone has any interest of just playing in that universe more. But there's room for it. It's interesting. But what I will say about it is that it doesn't go out of its way to try and explain how any of it is happening, which is why it succeeds so much more than Outer Range did, for example.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that.
Because Outer Range goes out of its way to over-explain. And by the time you're in the midst of it, you just don't fucking care anymore. But I guess I should ask you, do you still care about Diablo Immortal? Are you able to play this without draining the bank?
Yeah, this is kind of interesting because I was looking for a game to kind of sink some time into because I am still a bachelor for the week, and this kind of popped up on my phone. It's technically free. You can download it. You can play through the whole game if you want, completely for free. But I will say that there is some very dubious pay-to-win mechanics here.
Explain it. What's the pay-to-win? Just your best stats, your best chance of beating a boss is all dependent on how much real money you have spent?
Yeah, it's mostly like there's certain items that you will never have any chance in hell getting unless you pay real money. Like as far as like people will be familiar if they've played previous Diablo games that there's like gems that you socket into your equipment. Stuff like that, like legendary gems you'll never get. It's pretty much impossible to get if you're playing completely for free. And then on top of that, all the cosmetics, of course, are you have to pay for. And I will say that I did. You level up to level 60 through the story in this game, and I was able to level to 58. But once you hit level 50, you really, really bump up against the pay-to-win ness of this game, where it really gets hard to level once you get to level 50, and you can tell that they're like, oh, you need to get to 60, so you need to spend the money. But I was able to get to level 58, but I kind of gave up because I actually beat the story. I did the entire story of the game, and I deleted it from my phone because I don't want to be I don't want this dangling in front of my face, and that's all I wanted. And I would say if you're somebody who has trouble with gambling or with stuff like that, do not play this, because it's very, very, they're constantly dangling those things in front of your face. But otherwise, if you can play through this and not be tempted by those things, this is a very good approximation of a Diablo game for phones. And
gotcha.
You can also play it on PC. There's a PC version of the game on
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can go between the two if you want. You can play a little bit on your phone, and then you can go to your PC and
see. And that's where they get you as soon as they have that connectivity, because then that's how they get you everywhere.
Yeah. But the really funny thing about this game is, I mean, the domination of like the talk around this game. What everybody can't stop talking about is there was like a YouTuber who found out that you needed to spend like $110,000 if you wanted to get your character like completely kitted up with all the best gear, and it's just so nuts. It's so ridiculous.
What?
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. And there was actually a streamer the other day. There's another clip going around of a Twitch streamer who was trying to get a specific item, a legendary gem, and he sunk, over the course of his stream, he sunk $3,000 into the game and never got anything. What he was looking for. And it was so funny. It's just so like ridiculous. And it's like, I mean, at some point you have to have some self-control, but
right, exactly. Yeah, like there was a time where Hearthstone gobbled up with get like $2 at a time from me, so that I could play arenas, because those were addicting and fun. But yeah, it's eventually you got to be able to say, no, I do not need League of Legends skins. I do not need to roll for CSGO stuff. You know, I never did that. But addiction is a major concern. And you almost wonder if video game reviews shouldn't include mentions of, hey, if you have a gambling addiction, don't play this. There should be an advisory warning on games. But I guess that's what the in-game purchases is the warning sign that they look for. But maybe it should be more direct. Treat it like cigarettes, I say.
Exactly, yeah. And to kind of piggyback on that, this game actually was not able to be released in, I think, the Netherlands and Belgium because
there you go. Yeah.
Of the gambling aspects of it, because those countries consider this game gambling, and perhaps we should also. But yeah, this game, you can't play it in those countries at all. So just be careful. I mean, it's very fun. I enjoyed my time with it. I like the story, and that's really all I care about. I don't give a shit about PvP. I don't care about the end game stuff. I wanted to go through the story, and that's what I did, and now I can forget about it. So
exactly. Over and done with. That's life. That's just how it goes. And sorry, I got a little girl in my lap who's trying to make me read her a board book. So, but
okay.
So that's Since I haven't played that, I really can't comment on it. But what I can comment on is our main event for the show today, which is probably something November shouldn't see a single frame of, if I'm honest with myself. But she found her Bluey doll, so everything's fine. So we can talk about Crimes of the Future with some spoiler light impressions at the beginning of this. This thing set Can on fire, except it didn't win a goddamn thing. But who needs to win when the real prize is who goes down as the one that sent the most people packing for the exits? And I'm not sure who actually won that this year. Movies like, was it Holy Spider? Really pissed people off. So the Can we probably deserves its own little section, maybe next week or something, because a lot of neat things happened there this year, actually, including Crimes of the Future. But how much of this movie was genuinely comprehensible to you? How much of a Cronenbergian scientist are you personally? How acquainted are you with his work?
I've seen, I think, most of his movies. Some of his very, very early work, like his student films, I haven't seen, including the original version of this movie. And then there was a couple of his more recent ones. I've seen Map to the Stars, but I haven't seen Cosmopolis. That was the one that
Cosmopolis is interesting once. Just like if you're a fan of our boy Arpats. It's worth watching, but it's incomprehensible. It tries to be lo-fi, but yeah, it's one of those. What is it, Dom Dilio? He's like one of those weird writers. So yeah, I don't. That movie's all over the place. I haven't seen Maps to the Stars myself personally, but before we really dive into the movie, I kind of want to contextualize the different eras of Cronenberg. And because there was a stretch there after his run of success in the 80s where, like, after he made Crash in the 90s, he really got bogged down making really bizarre shit, and he just lost people, and he lost himself to such an extent that he stopped making quote-unquote Cronenberg movies for a while when he started working with Viggo Mortensen. Because they went on, they made 3 movies together. They did History of Violence, they did
Eastern
Promises, and A Dangerous Method. And so they had like a run together where they were making, essentially what functioned as Oscar bait. For both of them. And
they were. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of one of the high points of his career, though. In all honesty, like it. Eastern Promises and History of Violence, because it was such a interesting mix of like his sensibilities, but with like a more I don't want to say generic. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but just more
middle
palatable.
brow, more middle brow.
Yeah,
less avant-garde. And Yeah, so, and that run was pretty successful for him, you know. Like, it didn't get him his Best Director nomination, you know, but, you know, the actors and the screenwriters made out pretty good from those movies. And then he started making his more experimental type shit, like Maps of the Stars and Cosmopolis, and I'm not sure if there's anything else in between there. But neither of those really excited, you know, moviegoers or critics either. But then this movie, from the word go, had people fucking excited. And why do you think that was? Like what did we know about this movie by the time it actually, you know, had any footage out of it? Like the people were primed and ready for it for months, it felt like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's literally just boils down to it's a promise of a return to form, basically. It's sort of the trailer for this movie and the details about it were essentially one big advertisement for him saying, I'm going back to my 80s self, or, you know, I'm going back to my early 90s self.
Yeah.
I'm doing what you all want, you know, I'm doing this thing. And so that was, I think, what got people interested.
Yeah, because like we've alluded to, we've brought up his son a few times, you know, because, you know, his movies have been so successful. And, you know, especially at just channeling the cosmic strangeness, you know, the uncomfortable paranoia, you know, inducing imagery that he can throw, you know, and put your mind through. Like, he always kind of needed to, you know, come back to this at some point. And who knows if, you know, like, because, yeah, that was the question. Did he still have any of that old mojo left in the tank? And just, do you think he does? Or, like, did he blow it all on this movie, and was it all for naught? Or did he succeed?
You know, I think it's kind of a mixed reaction for me, because this movie's such a weird mix of his, like, modern sensibilities, where there's parts of it that are absolutely dull and, like, directionless, and you know, almost, it's a tone piece, but in some places it's not a very good one. And then there's other places where, you know, it's like, oh man, this setting is really cool. I want to know more about this world, and these devices that these people use is so strange and cool. And I want to know more about this resistance group that makes these plastic bars. And, you know, it's interesting in that respect. And that's kind of what kept me going throughout the movie. And so it's a mixed reaction for me.
Yeah. And because that's the thing. It is a very fascinating little universe. And the you know, the premise being that humanity has evolved to this point where microevolutions and mutations are just utterly commonplace, to an extent that it is just a common thing for people to grow, you know, extra organs that may or may not have a function, but are nonetheless cut out, you know, in front of a crowd using weird robotic, like, home unit, like, robot laser, you know, scalpel cutter things, like robot surgeon hands. But it's all sex, because it's Cronenberg. It has to, like, this is basically the new flesh thesis taken to its logical extent, I guess, like, as far as Cronenberg's whole oeuvre is concerned. So I see why he came back to it. This movie has a lot of connective tissue with existence, I guess I would say, just in how, like, how all of the devices that people use are, like, flesh based, and, like, they almost look like they're grown, like they're kombucha mothers, basically. You know what I mean?
It's like organic fleshy things mixed with technology.
Yeah. So what the fuck was with that chair that he was always sitting in? What was it? What was it doing to help him digest his food? I never understood. It was so. That's kind of what this movie, to its credit, it doesn't hold your hand on everything, but with how much it over explains in certain sections, I wish they would fucking explain why any of this shit helps. You know what I mean? Like, why is the world like this?
I kind of took it because essentially what the chair did was it like sort of shifts him, like very herky jerky, and I assume that it was basically like making the food like navigate his like fucked up digestive system better or something like that.
I'll accept that answer. Because, yeah, it's a very bizarre movie, needless to say, but the performances in it are really strange. Especially from Viggo Mortensen. His whole character is crazy, but everything that they have him doing just, like, blows my fucking mind. Like, if they don't give him an Oscar nomination, there's no point to this shit. Because, I don't know, like, I don't know. I just can't handle some of the shit that they were doing. Like the phlegm, the constant hacking,
yeah,
and like
so cool.
like the direct, like you put it in the meme, you know, like in our thumbnail, but yeah, the direction was more phlegm, Viggo, you know, more horse this time. Mm-hmm. You know, like this was an ASMR nightmare, you know, mm-hmm. And you have Leah, is that Leah Seydoux? Is that her name?
Yep.
Yeah, you have Leah Seydoux, you know, God bless her yet again, just going au naturel so she can be sliced open by robot lasers, you know, because it's an orgasm every time. This movie has more cum faces than like the front page of Pornhub, and I don't know how we should feel about that.
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, well, they say it pretty blatantly in the movie, but yeah, surgery is the new sex, and the one thing I don't think we mentioned yet is that people don't really feel anything anymore.
Yeah, that's the main universal alteration that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like pain doesn't exist anymore, so people have to kind of, well, I assume because pain doesn't exist, even like the good sensations don't exist either, and so they have to go to these extents to feel anything, really. Well, and
I think we should probably just throw on the spoilerific in-depth review side.
Yes.
Because, I don't know, like, the imagery in this was just so deeply uncomfortable. I can understand why people left the theater. Did you have walkouts when you saw this?
No, I didn't. I just there was like me and maybe 5 other people, and I'd told you before our podcast last week, but I'll say it on air now that there was a guy who went through the trouble of eating an entire pizza during the surgery scene in this movie, and it was the most disgusting thing ever. And
what fucking savage!
Yeah. I got more grossed out by that, or just like thinking about that, than I did anything in the movie. But it was so gross, But other than that, no, nobody left. And what about you?
I have to confess, I found alternative means of viewing this film. I was not able to sneak away to go down to Bismarck, so I didn't see this in a theater. I didn't walk out of this movie. I watched it while everyone in the house was asleep, and then I could
as
not,
you should.
And then I could not sleep. You know what I mean? It was one of those situations where I just was like, well, I can die now, because I things I appreciated. The effects in this movie, like all of the makeup, like the makeup probably deserves some, thought. When we go closer to the end of the year, the ear guy in particular, the idea that you can just suddenly just start sprouting ears all over your body. It's like if CRISPR, goes completely off the rails. And it's like BioShock, and people are just injecting extra limbs into themselves, over and over again until they mutate irrevocably. Like that's basically the horror show reality that this story comes from. But at Cannes, it inspired a fuck ton of walkouts. People really didn't fucking handle this movie very well, but then they applauded it for like 10 fucking minutes. Making that fucking space-age motherfucker just look... He's never looked more smug, and I love him. But
those white glasses.
God, he was just like, I'm here, baby! Give me that Palme d'Or! They give it to Tom Cruise instead.
It's interesting because Cannes... The thing about Cannes is people walk out of movies all the time, and I think in a lot of ways it's like... It's an attention-seeking thing because whenever people do it, the reports are always that when people walk out at Cannes, they make a big show of it. Like they'll boo, or they'll like stand up and they'll say something and then walk out. And it's a big show. It's a big song and dance. It's stupid.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened.
And how much of it is kayfabe? How much of it is people like being like, hey, here's like a bag of blow. Why don't you have a fun can, but blow up my movie premiere so that people write about how offended you were? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is a very, very good theory, because the thing about Cronenberg is with this movie, and I remember even when I was like in, early college, late high school, the conversation around Eastern Promises and History of Violence were the exact same thing, where people were like, oh, these movies are so violent, people walked out, it's so disgusting, and it almost makes you wonder if it's all just like marketing,
It kind of feels like it at this point. Because, I was made, like, the things that made me uncomfortable in this movie were very specific. The woman, orgasming as another woman stabs in between her Achilles and her, like, ankle bones, like, over and over and over again. Like, that's when I was just like, oh, Jesus Christ, spare me. But even the like, child autopsy scene didn't make me that uncomfortable. But I cringed more watching the linoleum bathhouse knife fight, in Eastern Promises, just because of the implication, which I guess speaks to maybe going this deep into his leftover brain space from when he made Naked Lunch. Maybe he didn't have to go this deep in there. He could have been a little more artful with it, because this was kind of hammy, but I guess that's kind of maybe the message. I don't know. Pink plastic bars. It's like
yeah. Well, what do you? I was going to ask about that. Yeah. What do you think he's trying to get across, or what are the things? I mean, there's a number of things that I think he's trying to get across. But what do you think?
Because it is a real like this is a real headline from the last few days, but they have just discovered in the snow of Antarctica microplastics, which is a testament to how much microplastics have permeated nature from all of our use and pollution, and the fact that petroleum products are literally everything modern society is built on. It's in the water, it's in our food. There's no getting away from it, And the idea that, if human evolution really is like running out of control, like I did kind of, that's what I mean. Like the cult, the weird cult activist group, that was, that Viggo Mortensen's character is basically, this is basically like, what do you call it? This is like Casablanca, but but with existence, with lots of weird futuristic body horror shit happening. But yeah, is he gonna help this group, or is he gonna undermine them? Is he gonna get them killed and arrested, or is he gonna help them fulfill their mission? Like that's kind of the underpinning of the movie's narrative, if it has one, because it is just kind of one segue to another gross body horror sequence showcase from him, which I'm not complaining about, but eventually it had me going, wow, like I wish this movie was 10-15 minutes shorter.
Yes, for sure.
It would have been more impactful had there been no breathing room between all the fucking weird things he can think up. And there's some deeply uncomfortable shit happening in this fucking thing. But it gets heady in good ways, in ways that I think make sense. Like with as far as the microplastics are concerned, it's like taking a concern from the real world and trying to find some weird way to make it prescient and disturbing. But the whole notion is eventually we are just going to evolve to be able to eat plastic. And everything we eat will be plastic.
Oh yeah,
because that'll be because that's the only thing that will be left is all of our waste. And I guess that's the obvious message that the movie has.
Yeah, and then there's other stuff in there too that I kind of gleaned on, like just the question of what is art. That's definitely in there, and.
Sure.
like our propensity to use violence as a means of catharsis in society, and what constitutes going too far with art, stuff like that. There's a lot, especially with the scenes of them kind of doing their little shows. There's a lot to be taken from that in regards to modern art, sort of criticizing it and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot happening in this movie. It goes without saying. Let's see here. Yeah.
I wanted to kind of go back to the performances, because you had mentioned Viggo Mortensen and Lea Seydoux, but for me, the MVPs of this movie, I probably have to be Kirsten Stewart, because she seems to, in some respects, she kind of seems to be the only person who knows what kind of movie she's in.
I was going to say that, because, there's some line deliveries from other characters that just, like, should be funny, but aren't, because they're taking it too fucking seriously. Like, this was kind of supposed to be a comedy, right?
It was definitely a black comedy. It was, like, a lot of her scenes are especially funny, and she's so, for a character that's probably on screen for maybe a total of 5 minutes, maybe 10, between 5 and 10, she is so, like, developed as a character. You know exactly who she is. She's, this sort of awkward, like, mousy, quiet girl who is, like, also secretly really, really horny. So it's so great. Like, her performance was so good, and especially for somebody who didn't have a lot of screen time, and to go with that too, another duo of side characters. I loved the, like, pod repair women. The duo of they were great too. Like, they were just so, like, such characters, and I love the scene when they, like, get in the pods naked, and Lea Seydoux's, like, in their workshop or whatever, and I think I don't know exactly what that was meant to convey, but I think they were trying to seduce her. Because they were like, cut us up, whatever your name is. Because that's the new sex, because that's what made Kristen Stewart's character, like, very memorable, was that she was literally the only character who was interested in the old sex, as it is called. I'm not so good at the old sex anymore. That cracked me the fuck up. Like, I thought that was very funny. But what did you make of the ending? Yeah, that's interesting, because the way that I interpreted it was that, there's a reason why there's so much of that throat clearing and so much of the hacking and coughing throughout the movie, because he wants to get it in your head. He wants you to notice it and how often it happens. And I believe that the ending was meant to convey that he had eaten the plastic thing, and the coughing disappeared. Like, he had finally found what he needed. He found his cure. He found his fix, because nothing else was doing it for him. The chair wasn't working. The pods weren't working. And he had finally found the fix, because after he does that, he stops coughing, and then the tear goes down his eye. He starts crying, and then it ends. So that was my interpretation. But what about you?
I think your interpretation is very beautiful, very simple. Like, my thought was, he just wants to kill himself initially, and that's because it's supposed to be toxic for him, but that maybe he would survive because maybe that's what his new organ that he's always cutting out is meant for, and that this change is naturally occurring and already exists within some of the population. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to go, with it, because that's basically what this movie is just about, like, using art for sneaky ad campaigns for products that will be useful to society, to sell it to society. And that's ultimately what the movie is, if you break it down to its most basic levels. And it just happens to be in a very gonzo Cronenbergian setting, so it's a lot more interesting than it probably could have been. But seeing people who just, like, have, like, gill flesh all over their body because they're cut open so much. It's just like, Jesus Christ. Like my skin crawls thinking about some of the things that you have to see in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the one last thing, I don't know if you wanted to touch on anything else, but one thing I wanted to touch on was did you notice, I don't know, maybe you didn't see it on what you were watching, but the number of studio logos before the movie?
I did, actually. It's absurd.
It was like 7.
It was more logos than RRR.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And I guess I was thinking about that, I noticed that when I was in the theater, and I was thinking about that, and you wonder if this is the only way that a Cronenberg movie gets made nowadays, because it's been 8 years since he made a movie, and the budget on this movie can't be very much. 10 million at most, I would say.
They made it in Greece, the cheapest.
Yeah.
Like, they will pay you to make the movie there.
And they're using like the same like side streets over and over, and like the same like beach with like a boat on it, like a deserted boat, and where he like meets up with that like weird government guy all the time.
Yeah.
And so, you know it's low budget. And when I was doing a little bit of research, and when Cronenberg was initially shopping this idea around, it was 2003. Okay. And at the time, he had secured, I think it was $35 million for the movie.
Well, with inflation, you have to think about how much that movie could buy for you back then. How much Cronenberg could do. With practical effects and so on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it's I don't know, it's interesting to look at those things, and as to how much his kind of star has faded, because he needs 7 different companies, and also the help of the government of Canada, like Canada's art fund.
Yeah. He's kind of joined at the hip to that organization. Yeah. Is there a more famous Canadian filmmaker? I guess James Cameron, but how much loyalty does he have to Canada?
I don't think he probably doesn't care.
He doesn't care. Yeah, Cronenberg has always been a state project for our northern neighbors. So I can understand that they have him deep in their clutches. He's part of the New World Order now.
Oh, you know who is Canadian, I believe?
Who?
Villeneuve.
Yeah, that's true.
Denis Villeneuve is Canadian,
true.
But
yeah,
because I seem to remember when I watched what is his movie called again, about the shooter, the college shooter?
Oh, Polytechnic.
Yeah, Polytechnic. I think that movie was funded in part by the government of Canada.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
That movie's relevant. But we've watched enough mass shooter movies for 20. We don't need to watch anything more from the past, especially.
But it's just, that's something that I thought of, and it's just interesting that he needs all these different avenues to secure not even that much funding, not even. I'm sure that each one of these agencies didn't give him more than 1 or 2 million, which in the grand scheme of things isn't much.
He nickel and dimed his way to make the movie that he made, and God bless him. Because, there's some shit in here that you couldn't hope to even think about getting into a movie, for any amount of money, unless it was totally self-funded and completely, shoestring. But like Shane Carruth proves, you lose a lot of sanity attempting to do anything like that. So you have to bend and scrape. You got to beg. You have to burn all your cachet. Because even Francis Ford Coppola got to make that ridiculous, Twixt, whatever that movie was. Somehow he scraped the money together for that. So I feel like, this is his elder statesman movie. This is his last swing at the fences. And it might be a foul ball most of the time, but I don't know. It as far as movies so far this year, it will be memorable. But I still feel like Crash made me more uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a little more obvious with the sex in Crash, so it's a little less in this. It's just a little more obfuscated, but
it's just that. over and over again. Like that got tedious. Was just how often these people were coming. It was just like you. Somebody should just take "Jizz in My Pants" by like Lonely Island, and just slap that over this movie all the way through, and I would watch that.
Yeah, but I don't know. Did you have a final word on it? I guess I would say I'm glad I saw it, and I would say
see it in the theater. Don't do what I did.
Don't go with your mom.
Do not go with your mom. Yeah. Hey, and if your spouse or significant other isn't as kinky weird as you, maybe also consider, like putting this movie off until later and saying a movie you can see together. Because this is the kind of film that it's not as bad. It's okay. It's not like a Serbian film, which you definitely don't want anyone walking in on you watching.
No.
It's kind of along the lines of The House That Jack Built, as far as uncomfortability. It's like you still don't want anyone to watch you watching this. It's like you'd rather that they cut you watching porn, like actual pornography, than this, because they'll just be like, "What?" Like when Angie poked her head in last night and saw what was on the screen, she was just like, "Fuck that! I'm gonna go watch something else." And she went and she watched Hustle, the new film from I think is it on Netflix with Adam Sandler about a basketball recruit. Yeah. So we had very different nights last night as we watched our respective films. But I guess that kind of sums it up. What do we have coming out next week to talk about?
Yeah, so big one next week is Lightyear, of course, the new Pixar movie, a very strange film, I guess, set in the same, well, not even really set in the same universe as Toy Story, but basically the movie that Andy would have watched before he went and bought the Buzz Lightyear toy. That's kind of how I've heard it pitched. So
that is the pitch I heard as well. And like that looks kind of interesting. It's like, what if, Space Marines from 40K were Disney friendly, Pixar friendly? And I guess I really swung at the fences with this one, hoping that it would catch fire and would be the movie that people go to. But I think I really fucked up with that. But we'll save that for our, after the movie's been out, we'll talk about where I'm at in the scheme of things. Because I've been keeping my eye on you, sir, and you're doing pretty well. You're almost in the double digits as far as your global ranking. You're doing pretty well. You're doing pretty well. And then we have Netflix. Speaking of Netflix, has Spiderhead coming out. Is that a series or a movie?
This is a movie. This looks interesting. I thought about proposing us watching this for next week because it's so Top Gun Maverick took so long to come out that this is the movie that Joseph Kosinski made after that is coming out literally a month after the Top Gun Maverick.
That is never a good thing. You never want that to be true about your project. But it's Chris Hemsworth. It's our boy Miles Teller. Who else is in this? There's a lot of faces that are familiar. But it's basically like a prison installation where it's like you're just constantly dosed. You're constantly told that everything you're doing is super important. And it's not even clear what's being studied.
Yeah, I don't know. This could go either way. I mean, I'm going to probably watch this no matter what.
Yeah.
Because I'm always down for like a low-budget sci-fi or mid-budget sci-fi. So, yeah, I'm here for this, whatever it is.
Oh, yeah. Very good, very good. Let me do something quick here. Our other thing to look out for next week was Mad God on Shudder. I was the one who was like, hey, let's just get a AMC Plus 1 month subscription so we can watch this. Because this is our boy Phil Tippett. This is his masterwork, his magnum opus. This is the film version of the Necronomicon that will summon Cthulhu. when we finish watching it. If enough people watch it, the meme will permeate into society, and we will all, bear witness to the rise of the unholy one. But I really want to fucking see this somehow. I'll find a way.
Me too. Yeah, I've heard absolute crazy things about it, and
because it's a stop motion film, right?
Well, it's a bunch of things I've heard. He mixes stop motion with like regular animation and live action in some parts, and like what is it called when motion capture? Like I've heard it's like a bunch of stuff, and he took like 10 years to make it or something like that. So yeah, very very interested in this. Yeah, I've heard it's absolutely batshit.
I'm looking forward to it. What is Players premiere?
Yeah, well, it's just the premiere of Players. The show is called Players, and this is a Paramount Plus show. And this is weird. This is a esports mockumentary.
I have seen this trailer.
Yeah, it's from the guys who made American Vandal. And,
that's why it has that vibe then. Okay, that makes sense.
And it's really, the weird thing about this is that they actually like licensed League of Legends for the show.
And isn't the team like 1,000 or 100 Thieves or whatever? Or was it
is that a real team?
Or is that a fake team? No,
I think it's fake.
No, 100 Thieves is a real team.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. I guess I didn't know, but I just knew that.
Is that the team from the trailer though?
I don't know. I don't remember honestly. But
that'd be the extra bolt of synergy is the fact that an esports team would have put their brand in this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I saw this, I couldn't believe it was real, but I almost feel like it's 6 years too late. You know what I mean? Like I'm still interested in it, but I feel like if it really wanted to pop properly, because the esports bubble done burst. The Dota Professional League is in shambles. Overwatch got literally shut down for its professional sports league. I don't even know if Counter-Strike exists anymore, but like League of Legends I haven't paid attention to in a long time. But but that's why I'm vibing with it, because I'm like, it works better as like a sort of mockumentary comedy thing than a genuine product anymore. Because if you're not playing those games, like how can it be interesting? Unless you're doing more with it than that. So that I wasn't sure what to make of that. But American Vandal's behind it. Those people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, there is a certain degree of pedigree behind it, I think, and yeah, I might, because I still have that Paramount Plus trial, so I might jump on this one if the word is good.
And we still have it too, because there's always random things like SpongeBob. It's got SpongeBob on there. That's why we have it. But we still have Hulu. Mm-hmm. But we are going to. I could watch The Old Man, which is a series starring Jeff Bridges.
Yep.
As an old man who kills people, a la Liam Neeson, a la John Wick, but it's Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, did you watch the trailer for this?
I did not. No.
Okay. It looks a little generic. I think it could go either way. I was looking up, kind of who's behind it, and it's from the creators, the two guys who created the show Black Sails, that pirate show.
Weird.
Yeah, and I think they also, like a long time ago, they were also the creators of Jericho. Do you remember Jericho?
I remember that show. That's the Kansas apocalypse show.
Yeah. It was better than it had any right to be, honestly.
Yeah. But talk about shows that don't greenlight anymore, though.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. That was the hotness back in the aughts. Mm-hmm. That was the true golden age of TV. All the canceled shit.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Oh yeah. This, I don't know. It could go either way. It looks a little generic, but this is one where I'll see the word on it.
We'll just have to wait and see. So, yeah, because I, Meninian, forgot to write this idea that I had down, we almost, I don't know, we potentially might not have a parting question. Unless, did something really occur to you?
I think I've got one.
You
I
got
think I've
one?
got one here.
All right,
Yeah, this should
let's
be
hear it.
fairly simple one to answer next week. But what I want to know is, do you enjoy, or have you enjoyed in the past, watching films and TV in an altered state? And you know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
It can be anything, and yeah, let's just talk about it, because my thoughts about this subject have kind of evolved over the course of probably the last like 10 years or so, maybe 15 years, and so yeah, let's talk about that.
That's actually a thoughtful question. There's a lot to consider, and yeah, no, that was a good one. There's a lot to chew on, a lot of different directions to go. It could be its own. It could be its own video. We'll have to see. Yeah. But that kind of does it from the Mezzanine. We give, I guess, a somewhat, like, I guess you could call it lukewarm recommendation for Crimes of the Future if you're into that kind of thing. But if you're not into that kind of thing, just don't do it. Just don't do it to yourself.
Stay away.
Stay away. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so we'll see you all next week.
Yeah, see ya.
Have a good one.